Rome in the empire, as the capital of a vast state, was full of troops who were at the same time guards for Caesar, his retinue during long journeys and military expeditions, as well as a police force that monitored public order in the city streets. They kept guard around the Palatine Palace, in the Forum, at the circus, and in crowded places. In the guard served the scions of the best families of Italy and selected one by one soldiers of the legions. But the protection of the chambers inside the palace was carried out by soldiers recruited from foreigners, the so-called Germanic bodyguards. How was formed their detachment and what was its organizational structure? Back in the Republican era, Roman commanders surrounded themselves with guards, which was made up of selected horsemen of allies, the so-called extraordinary. These warriors guarded the commander, acted as couriers, and occasionally played the role of a strategic reserve. The commander often favored the escort riders, as on their courage could depend on his own life and the course of the military campaign. It is known that Gaius Marius granted Roman civil rights to 1,000 Camarinians for their courage during the war against the Teutons and Samorians. An inscription on a bronze table mentions the granting of Roman citizenship rights to 30 horsemen of Spanish origin by Gnaeus Pompeius Strabo, father of the famous Pompeius Magna. They served as part of the Salvitan Terma, no doubt as escorts for the commander. The Germans as part of the Roman army first appear under Julius Caesar. In his notes, he reports that from the beginning of the Gallic War he kept 400 select Germanic horsemen with him. Their valor was repeatedly recorded in the description of the hostilities. In the Battle of Noviodun, German horsemen overturned the cavalry of the rebellious Gauls with a decisive onslaught. With the beginning of the Civil War, 800 Gallic and Germanic horsemen accompanied Caesar in Spain, then in Greece. During the Alexandrian War, a detachment of Germanic horsemen swam across the river with weapons in hand and took a bridgehead on the other side of the river. Caesar's former comrade in arms in the Gallic War, who then moved into the camp of his enemies, Titus Labienus, also had a detachment of Gallic and Germanic horsemen, partly brought by him from Gaul, partly recruited from prisoners of war. After Caesar's death, his Germanic horsemen came under Octavian's command, then defected from him to Mark Antony. With the reconciliation of the Caesarian party, the Germanic horsemen also became part of the united army and fought at the Battle of Philippi against the Republicans. Some of them followed Antony to the east. Others stayed with Octavian in Italy and accompanied him on his trip to Sicily. In the future, the path of the detachment becomes more difficult to trace. Most likely, it was the basis of the corps of Germanic bodyguards of the emperors of the Julian-Claudius dynasty. Cassius Dion, mentioning the detachment of Germanic bodyguards among other guard units created by Augustus, writes, "The service also carried selected foreign riders, who were nicknamed Batavians, because this people gives excellent riders." And the name comes from the island of Batavia on the Rhine. Judging by the data of epigraphy, Batavians really made up a significant part of Germanic bodyguards. Along with them there were also natives of other tribes that lived on the right bank of the Rhine and at its mouth. The once occurring name, Germanic cohort, may indicate the size of the bodyguard detachment in the range from 500 to 1,000 warriors, which corresponds to the standard size of a cohort in the Roman army. In contrast, the name numerus, or even manus, are indications of an abstract detachment of indeterminate size. According to Cassius Dion, quoted above, the Germanic bodyguards were select horsemen. This information is confirmed by other authors as well. Germanic bodyguards, together with Praetorian horsemen, accompanied Drusus the Younger, son of Emperor Tiberius, in Pannonia during the soldier revolt that broke out there. In 65 they, again together with Praetorian horsemen, patrolled the streets of Rome during the turbulent days when Pison's plot was uncovered. The Romans valued the great stature, physical stature and strength of the Germans. Josephus Flavius, describing the Germanic bodyguards of Caligula, characterized them as follows. These barbarians are easily irritated. This they resemble some barbarian tribes, characterized by lack of reasoning. Possessing terrible physical strength, they always make the first onslaught on those whom they consider enemies, and often enjoy success. In historical times, the Germans had a tradition of military service of youth in foreign lands. As a result, the Romans had no shortage of Germanic recruits serving in their auxiliary cohorts, and alas, the best of these warriors could be selected to serve as imperial bodyguards in Rome. The high number of Greek and Roman names found among the Batavians can be explained by the close ties their nobles maintained with Rome. Taking into account the high status of the detachment, generous monetary gifts and the opportunity to be in the immediate vicinity of the emperor, among the imperial bodyguards could be the children of political immigrants and hostages from among the Germanic tribes. Most likely, Autolycus, nephew of Arminius, son of his brother Flavius, who adhered to pro-Roman views, served in ranks of Germanic bodyguards of emperor. Autolycus, as Tacitus reports, was born in Rome, had a handsome appearance, and was good with weapons, both Roman and Germanic. In 47 the Cheruscians asked the Emperor Claudius to give them a king, and he sent Autolycus to them, supplying him with money and an honorable retinue. Finally, some number of recruits of the detachment could have been recruited from slaves and prisoners of war of Germanic origin. This circumstance is indicated by the Greek names of some guardsmen, just characteristic of slaves in Rome. The internal structure of the detachment of Germanic bodyguards is poorly known. The squad was headed by a tribune, which is also characteristic of the Praetorian cohorts of the same time. This position was often held by imperial freedmen or former gladiators. In the reign of Caligula, the tribune of the Germans was Sabinus, who, in the words of Josephus Flavius, was a tribune not because of valor or noble origin. He himself was a gladiator, but managed by his great physical strength to gain power over these people. Under Nero, the same position was held by another famous gladiator and favorite of the Emperor Spiculus. Former gladiators were other chiefs of bodyguards of lower rank. Suetonius reports that Caligula appointed Thracian gladiators as chiefs of his bodyguards. Pliny the Younger indulges in indignation at the fact that the military exercises were led not by decorated veterans, but by some instructors Greeks, as was the custom in gladiatorial schools. The formidable appearance of the Germans was supposed to inspire fear in the emperor's enemies. The duties of the bodyguards consisted in guarding the inner chambers of the Palatine Palace and escorting the emperor on his way out. Their services were used not only by the emperor himself, but also by members of his family. The emperors appreciated the unconditional loyalty of the German bodyguards, largely due to their foreign origin and the tradition of military service that existed in their homeland. After the assassination of Emperor Caligula in 41, his Germanic bodyguards prowled the palace in search of conspirators and slaughtered several senators with swords. They then cordoned off a theater full of people, intending to massacre them in memory of their dead master. Remembering this loyalty to the house of Julius Claudius, Emperor Galba, who came to power after Nero's death in 68, disbanded the Germanic bodyguards, sending them back home without their retirement bonuses and pay. Many of them returned to the Rhine, joined Civilis and took part in the revolt of the Batavians.